Hi, I'm Rob Cosman. Welcome to my shop. It's been a couple years since we did our video, Hand Cut Dovetails, a Different Approach. Come up with a few new ideas that are really going to help in cutting a dovetail joint by hand. Stay with me and I'm going to share it with you, and you could do this. I'm Rob Cosman and welcome to my shop. We make it our job to help you take your woodworking to the next level. If you're new to our channel, be sure to subscribe, turn on that notification bell, and don't forget to turn on the notification on your mobile device so you'll know every time we release a new video. Good? All right, back to the bench. I've spent the best part of the last 35 plus years teaching folks how to cut dovetail joints by hand. And what I find a lot of woodworkers want to be able to do is become very efficient at it. And that means being able to assemble the joint right from the saw. This is where you can actually do a drawer in less than a day. And I've got some samples here in front of me I'm going to introduce to you. But what I want to also tell you is I did a video I mentioned called Hand Cut Dovetails, a Different Approach. I'm going to leave a link in there, and I suggest you go back and watch that, maybe even before you go any further with this video, simply because I'm going to operate in this video under the assumption you already know that part, and I'm going to concentrate on the couple of areas that we've improved that make a really big difference. Now this is one of Jack Lane's, and Jack's a retired Air Force veteran. He came to our class, and that's the joint that he cut. And Jack would be 70 plus years old, so to be able to pull off a joint like that right from the saw, that's remarkable. If you're 25 years old and you did that, that's remarkable. Here's one by a vet named Phil Hind, and that is a half blind, but incredible joint for may have been his third or fourth that he'd ever done. Well, the big ticket in this is what we call the offset method. That's the part that allows a novice to cut a perfect dovetail in his first attempt. What we did is we added a new tool, thanks to a friend I'm going to introduce, at least in name, and that has made a huge difference in people being able to do that process accurately. So go check out the old video, then come back here, and I'm going to show you a couple of techniques that are going to make a really big difference for you. I'm a proponent of using good tools. I'm going to give you a little bit of proof here in a moment. But I want to just briefly show you the tools that I'm going to use, and I'm going to show you a couple of the changes that we've made. So if you look here, you'll see all of these from the previous video. Of course, the most important being the dovetail saw. But we used to use this. This is called a skew block plane made by Lee Nielsen, and it allows you to cut a little rabbet on the inside edge of the tailboard that allows you to better reference the tailboard to the pin board in the process of transferring tails to pins. Well, because of COVID and some situations going on, it's been hard to get. The prices really increased. We found, I can't remember, I wish I could give credit to it, but unfortunately I don't remember. We found a way of using some of this automotive refinishing masking tape to replace this, and when I do it, I'll show you how it may actually even be a better way. Now we've also replaced in the offset method, and if you're not familiar, offset method is where you move the tailboard over by one saw kerf in both directions when you're laying out the joint. Again, I'll show you. We used to use a marking gauge set for the thickness of the plane blade, and we would do that. But it found it difficult to do. Some folks found it really difficult. But we had a combat wounded vet in one of our classes named Sean McDermott. And Sean came up with this idea. And a few years later, we thought, you know what, that really is a good idea. So we went to work on it with Paul Hayton, who's a genius we work with. And we came up with something we call the Sean Shim. We actually pay Sean a royalty on this idea, but this will make a huge difference, and it will allow you, or I should say, it will introduce a level of precision to your dovetails that you may have not thought possible. Now, why buy really good tools? Well, let me show you something. If you get really good tools, they account for about 70% of the joint. The other 30% is the technique you're using and your ability. If you turn that around and you get cheap tools, you're looking at a 30% tool advantage and 70% you. Here's what I mean. I'm going to come in here about 3/4 of an inch, and I'm going to make a cut. I'm going to go the full depth that that saw will allow, and then I'm going to turn it on its side, and I'm going to remove that piece. Now, if you have a really good saw, among other tools, you'll be left with a surface that is not only flat, but also smooth. So when those two pieces come together, that joint all but disappears. You can swing it around to make sure you're not matching grooves, same idea, or the side of the tail comes up against the side of the pin, and you have a really good glue joint. That saves you a tremendous amount of work. If you have to come in with a chisel to try to straighten or flatten that surface, wow, way too much effort. So you don't have to use my tools. If you want to, if you like them, we'll leave a link below. But good tools make a huge difference in hand cutting dovetails. When it comes to the layout, everything has to be precise because your saw is going to follow those marks. It'll only be as good as your layout was accurate. Hey, if you like this video, we have more. Our newsletter has subscriber-only content, monthly discount on tools, and anything we bring out that's new, subscribers get first crack at it. Click on the link below. Let's get back to work. All right, so here's one of the first big changes. And again, I wish I could give credit to the person that developed this, but I really don't remember who it was. We used to take a skew block plane, put this in the vise with the end of the board hanging over the side of the bench. Your skew block plane was unique in that it had a side plate that came off to expose the blade. You would adjust your fence so that the point of the blade was right on that gauge line, and you would go through and you would take a shallow rabbet. Now, it worked wonderfully. However, it also meant that it changed the inside dimensions of your piece. So if you were building something, because of that little rabbet, instead of the joint stopping at the line, it would go a little bit farther. Well, watch what we do here. Now, as I mentioned, this is automotive refinishing masking tape. So it's a little bit thicker than regular masking tape, and it's a little stickier than painter's tape. So what I'm going to do is just come on the tail side of that line, and I'm going to use 4 pieces. Nice thing is that it's sticky enough to hold in place when I need it, but it's not so sticky that I can't easily get it off when I'm done. So make sure that's really on there well. Now, so that this doesn't interfere, I'm going to take a knife and just quickly trim that, both sides. Now, I should have left my marking gauge where it was, but I can easily put it back. I'm just going to reference off of that gauge line, lock it. Now, on the inside, I'm going to make multiple passes. It's just easier than trying to get it all in one until I've cut all the way through the tape. And then I'll carefully lift that tape off. And what that does now is it provides me with a little ledge. So when I put those 2 pieces together, that little ledge will catch and it'll line these up perfectly. Okay, just before I do this next step, I want to come in and remove this sawing fuzz so it doesn't interfere with the way the tailboard will lay against the pin board. Now I'm just going to run that gauge through there again. All right, that's clean. I'll put my pin board in the vise, plane on its side. Get this so that the top of the pin board is flush with the plane. It's not quite. Set this back. Now my little tape ledge acts to perfectly align these 2 pieces. So we used to do the offset, as I mentioned, using a marking gauge set to the thickness of the saw blade. Wasn't that easy? Big shout out to Sean McDermott for coming up with this idea. you'll notice that it says 23 thou, 24, 25, and 26, the same on the other side. This part is smaller by that amount than the bottom section. So what we're going to do, now my saw kerf, my blade is 20 thou, I have 2 thou set per side, so my saw kerf is 24 thousandths of an inch. So normally I would take the 24 thou. However, the farther over we push this, the bigger this pin's going to be. And sometimes when you're dealing with softwood, it's nice to compress it a little bit more. So instead of using the 24, which I typically would if I was dealing with hardwood, I'm going to use the 25. I'm actually going to put it up this way. And with the 25, I'm going to set it right here like that. And then I'm going to bring this over until it touches. When I remove that, I have a 25 thou offset. Now, if you want an extra hand, we made this big enough that you can come in there with a clamp and you can stretch across. I'm actually going to do it underneath, a little easier to hold. You can stretch that across and hold that in place. And now you don't have to worry about holding it. Get it exactly where you want it. So my tailboard is offset to my left, so I'm going to go to the right side of each tail. And I'm going to put that knife down in there, drag it through. Don't try to do it all in one step. Do multiple. It's easier to control. Each time I do this, I get a deeper kerf on that pin board. I'm going to go to the next tail. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go to the right side of it. Now the knife is shaped in such a way that you can reach that point right into the very back of the pin board. And the final one. Now I'm going to take this off. You don't have to use the clamp if you don't want to. This time I'm going to turn it around so that I can take my offset to my right. So now I've got the larger piece on the bottom, the gap on the top. Using my little tape wall, I'm going to move that over until it makes contact. And I can remove that. I'll hold it there firmly. Since I move my tailboard to the right, I'm going to go to the left side of each tail. Multiple passes make for a deeper kerf, make it easier to start the saw cut accurately when it comes to cutting the pins. Last one. Now you'll notice that I always reference off of the same side. If there were any difference in the thickness, in the width of this piece and this piece, it would throw it off if you went reference this side on one and that side on the other. So I always reference off the same side, and I do that by using the smaller piece over here when I do this one, and the wider piece on the top when I do the opposite. When I remove this, I now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 saw kerfs, and you'll see what we do next. Now simply peel off the tape. Nothing changes with your inside dimension, and it served its purpose. with the Sean shim and the masking tape, our students, 90% of the time, on their first completed dovetail, get one that absolutely amazes themselves. There's a big chip missing out of there, not sure where it came from, but other than that, not a bad dovetail. So if you're looking to improve your dovetails, try adding those two to your repertoire, and I think it'll really work well for you. Good luck. Oh, by the way, if you do cut them and you want to send them in to us, we'd be happy to put them on our page that we have dedicated to student work, RobCosman.com. If you like my work and enjoy my style of teaching, click on any one of these videos and help take your woodworking to the next level. I've always said, better tools make the job so much easier. If you click on the link below, the chisel and plane icon, it'll take you to our site and introduce you to all the tools that we actually manufacture right here in our shop. It'll also give you information on our online and in-person workshops.